What's going on, folks? Welcome in to episode 12 of the Bubba Rose Show. We're talking March Madness this week, and I'm very excited to welcome in to the show a guy who's been on the Sports Objective a couple times. Welcome in Keith, better known as Mr. Jennings. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing good. Nice to see you again, Bubba. You know, March Madness, always that great time of year, and it's good to have basketball back right now. So it's been some exciting things going on.
Absolutely. You certainly know a lot about March Madness. Your 3 straight trips to the NCAA tournament with the Bucks back in the late 80s and early 90s. But before we talk about some of those excellent memories, just talk about the craziness of the last 12 and a half months. And being a college basketball coach, you just completed your 4th season at Lees-McRae Division II program in Banner Elk, North Carolina. So just talk about your year with the Bobcats.
Well, you know, we made it back to the tournament this year, you know, so that was 3 of the 4 years that I've been head coach here. You know, we've been able to make it to the postseason, and, you know, that's still not good enough for us. We definitely want to go further. And, you know, when your girls get that year of experience under their belt year after year, then hopefully it all comes together. But, yeah, this was definitely a different year. Coaching in the pandemic was definitely something that I will remember. You know, masked up all year, all practices, all games. You know, the players had the option to wear the mask in the game, but when they sat on the bench, they always had to keep their mask on. You know, not shaking hands as much with the opposing coaches and opposing teams, things that you get used to doing. And, you know, I miss those little things. And, you know, on the bus, you got to wear the mask the whole trip and everything. So it was definitely a challenge, but you know, I was thankful that my team really stayed bubble-minded, and you know, we got through the season, and I'm just hoping that we can get back to some type of normalcy next season. But if not, then I believe we're prepared to go through this next season the same way.
Yeah, like you're saying, it took some getting used to, you know, seeing coaches and players just throw their hand up at the opposing team when the game was over and head for the locker room. You would occasionally see a fist bump or two, but for the most part, you know, great game, guys. We're out of here.
Yeah, you know, get there safely, get home safely. You know, we got tested like 3 times out of the week. So, you know, just making sure once you know you're negative, it's always a good feeling. But you like, is anything gonna happen that's gonna change this? Because I'm trying to stay very particular in what I do and how I move. And you know, as much as you want to get out there and see recruits and visit people, you know, you kind of got to play it more by the phone, more by the computer these days. And, you know, like I said, it was a challenge, but, you know, my assistant and I, we're raising to it, and, you know, we're looking forward to the future.
Now, the Division II level, talk about it, compare it as much as you can to Division I in terms of the COVID protocols and so on and so forth. I mean, all the obvious things as far as wearing the mask during the game, et cetera. But just talk about the regularity. I know testing depending on when your games were played, but most of the time you were testing, 3 times a week?
Yeah, it was just pretty much depending on when our games was. And it was very similar to the NCAA Division I schools. We had planned on playing a couple of those schools this year, but you know, we decided it would be better just to keep in our conference, just to make sure hopefully nothing else happened. But everything is pretty much the same. You know, everybody's masked up. The referees are masked up. Getting to the floor opposite times, trying not to cross paths until you play. I mean, like I said, everything was pretty much on par. Everywhere we went, the protocols at every gym was very on point. You know, they got us in, got us out. We did the same thing at our place. So it was just something that it was more really like a job. I think the fun kind of went out of it a little bit because you just, as a coach, you just want to get your team there safely, hopefully have no injuries, and then get back home safely and get ready for the next day. It really wasn't a whole lot to enjoy besides, we got through it, can we do it again? But then, of course, when you win some games, that always helps too. But for the most part, I think everything was very similar. And, just the main difference that I see in Division I and Division II is the scholarship opportunities that the Division I players get. I think having like maybe 10 to 12 girls on your team is pretty good. And I got anywhere from 16 to 20. And there's a lot of girls you got to try to keep happy, but you got to try to make it competitive. And here at our program at Leeds McRae, they know my best players play. So we get after it on the daily. And now we're in postseason workouts, and, we're just trying to build ourselves to get through the summer and hopefully get back ready for next year.
Yeah, you talk about the scheduling challenges, everything that the pandemic presented in that regard. Taking a look at that, I heard several Division I coaches, talk about, well, this league or this division, obviously there are different protocols, and when it comes to testing. So I know one of the things that Joe Dooley at East Carolina referenced was we had to schedule a game in the last minute with Division III North Carolina Wesleyan, and that they just played Coastal Carolina, so that allowed us to play them.
Right. Yeah, it was a lot of different things that I'm sure everybody did. I think this one of the things that I liked, one of the changes that I really liked was the scheduling, where instead of going all the way to Barton, which is like a 5.5, 6 hour trip, and then them coming back here, we would go there on a Friday, play them Friday, stay the night Friday, and then play them again Saturday to avoid them having to travel to our place. And I think that was pretty nice, just being able to play back-to-back games. I think our girls really, of course, they love playing more than practicing. So those type of things really helped us a little bit. But other than that, man, like I said, it was a challenge. I think we all got through it. And I think next year we will really know what to expect.
Yeah, some of the Division I conferences did that. I know the Sun Belt, which App State, right there in your neck of the woods, the league that the Apps are in, they did that, playing back-to-back days at the same location. And that was something you'd see some interesting results. You'd see one day a team would win by 2 points, the next day they win by 30.
Yeah. Hey, that's basketball, right? You just can never tell. It can be your day one day, and then the next night, if you're not prepared or you think it's going to go like that again, then it can change, especially when the teams are pretty competitive.
Now, did you guys have to add any games just on, add games on a whim because games were canceled?
No, like I said, we got through our part of the schedule very clean. A lot of other teams did have to do that. And, like I said, we almost played a couple of D1 teams in that little thing that you just said, where they lost somebody and we were able to go travel to them. But once again, we just decided just to play our conference games this year, just to see how that will be. And after we got through it, I think we'll feel better about expanding our schedule next year.
Shifting gears a little bit, and let's talk before we talk March Madness and everything that's going on currently, talk about your career, what a career it was with the East Tennessee State Buccaneers from 87 to 91. Those last 3 years, you went to March Madness and nearly knocked off Oklahoma, and also nearly knocked off Iowa. Unfortunately, came up short in those 2 games. But what are your memories of being a Buck? And then we'll dive into some of the specifics.
I mean, the definitely the first time playing in March Madness, playing in the NCAA tournament, as a sophomore, that definitely was just something that, as you know, in life, when something good happens and you got a chance for it to happen again, you're going to try to do the same things to make that happen, and once we made it, and even though we got that close and lost to Oklahoma, it was just a great feeling, the excitement, the sitting in front of your TV, wondering who you were going to play, wondering what kind of seed you were going to get, how far you were going to have to travel, where you're going to be able to measure up against some of the other so-called major D1 schools if you had to play them. So it was a lot of things that we learned early that, unfortunately, I never got that victory in the tournament. But, when the guys upset Arizona, the year after I left, it was like I was there with them, man. I was really happy for those guys. And, like I said, that March Madness, once you get a shot of it, is something that you definitely want to get to again. And, losing to Oklahoma, fouling out in that game, I still question what that referee was looking at. My junior year with Kenny Anderson and Dennis Scott put on a really good show that kind of let us know. And we thought we were a good running team, but they just ran right on past us, which led us to my senior year, which I felt like we got a bad seed considering we won 28 games and they give us a 10th seed and go out to play Iowa. We just thought, we could have had a better seed at home and would have done a better job if our fans could have came to that type of game. But, like I said, it was just a thrill, playing in that part of the year is just something that you'll never forget if you were able to do it.
Now, who all was on that Oklahoma team? I obviously remember how good they were during that era with Billy Tubbs leading the way.
They had Stacey King, who was, the Bulls' first-round draft pick, Mookie Blaylock, who also played with the Atlanta Hawks, So, we were playing against some guys that had a lot of, NBA future players on their team, like Kenny Anderson played with Georgia, with New Jersey Nets, and Derek Coleman played at Syracuse. So, everybody we played, AC Earl played in the league for a little while. It was at Iowa. So, you get to play against the best competition in the tournament. And like they say, man, it's, college basketball is something that, you play for that love and you just want to represent where you're from and represent your school to the fullest. And hopefully at the very end, you're the one that's the best team, the last team standing.
Taking a look at this year's tournament, obviously it was going to be history making no matter what because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the whole tournament being played in the greater Indianapolis, area within an hour and a half to 2 hours of Indy, with games being played at Indiana, Purdue, Butler, etc. But taking a look at that, what are your thoughts on that setup? Obviously, I think they're making the best they can of a bad situation, doing their best to get the games in. And knock on wood, so far we've only had that one game where you had Oregon advance with a forfeit against VCU.
Right. I mean, I think them having it at one venue is probably the best scenario. Cuts down on the traveling and dealing with different precautions of not knowing. So I think the NCAA is doing a wonderful job in that aspect. These games coming up, looking forward to keeping an eye on these teams. I'm always a fan of the underdog, but, I'm also a fan of just really good basketball. And, I see a lot of teams, man, you got your favorites, but, the way this goes, you just never know what can happen coming up this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you take a look at what transpired last weekend in the first round. Like I mentioned, this was a history-making year no matter what, and then it was a history-making year in other regards with what transpired on the court in the greater Indianapolis area. You had Oral Roberts, a 15 seed winning. You had Abilene Christian, a 14, 13 seeds, North Texas and Ohio, and that was the first time in tournament history that you had 4 teams, 13 seed or lower, advance to the round of 32.
Like I said, man, this was that type of year where something like that could happen, because one thing for sure, everybody was on the same playing field. Nobody got to do any extra work. Some of the best recruits that usually end up at these certain schools ended up going different places. So it was real. And then, you got the experience of the game. You got some teams like Loyola of Chicago have been together for a long time. So if they're going to play a team that's a young, big team, these guys are built for beating teams like that. So they're going to be a dangerous team from here on out. And like you said, those other teams, man, basketball is still, it's that type of game where if you're in the zone, that 40 minutes, anything can happen. And that's what we're starting to see. And, it's a testament to all the programs in America right now. I think all the coaches are still doing a good job. And I think these kids that are relishing in the moment, you might not usually get this opportunity, but now that it's right in front of you, it's like that why not us mentality I see a lot of these teams have. So I would be surprised to see a lot of blowouts from here on out, but like we say, we know that can happen in the game.
You using that phrase, Coach, in the zone. makes me think of the stories of Oral Roberts and also Oregon State. I was looking at both of those ball clubs and just seeing, obviously they've had excellent seasons, but just kind of following the path of their season and seeing how things went. Um, at one point, Oregon State, they were 11-11, but now they've won 8 out of 9, 5 straight, and won in the last round by I think 12 points against a very good Oklahoma State team. And then you have Oral Roberts. At one time, they were 11-10, and now they've put it all together. They have back-to-back wins over Ohio State and Florida. So just talk about that from both a player's perspective and a coach's perspective. Putting it all together and finding a way to play your best basketball when it matters most.
I mean, from a player's perspective, at this point of the year, you're about to play some of the best players in America. And the way I looked at it was, some of the guards that I faced in the tournament, I was hearing that they were going to go to the NBA. So I was just saying to myself, if I can just compete and show them what I could do, because my stats were pretty good. I mean, I had led the nation in assists my junior and senior year, and I shot like 59% from the three. So, I think the scouts really took notice of how I could shoot the ball, which really put me on a good platform when that presented itself. As a coach, one of the things I do, even in our practices now, just to get ready for the tournament, I'll divide my team up, maybe 3-on-3, and have a little tournament within our practice. So, it's like a 2-minute, 3-minute game. You play really quick. I seed you, and then I'll treat it like it's the tournament. So you got like a light, quick regular season, and then you got the tournament. Now, sometimes in that tournament, you got people that might be 0-3, and then they have to play the 3-0 team, but then they ended up beating them to go to the next round. And so that's one of the things I try to let my team know, like, no matter where you finish in the tournament, when it really gets started, anything can happen. And so I think that's what we're seeing. And I think a lot of the coaches have to be thinking that way. We're not supposed to win. We weren't supposed to win the last round, but look where we are. It's like I always knew, no matter what your regular season record was, like you said, 11-10, some people are undefeated, but you all 0-0 when the tournament starts. So then you got to look at it from that aspect, and then you take off from there.
You talk about the practice and the development piece, and then also, getting up shots. What a tremendous shooter you were there as a senior at ETSU. You knocked down 59% from three. I saw a quote, this isn't a direct quote, I'm paraphrasing, but Paul Mills at Oral Roberts, he was talking about just one of the things that he demands from their players is over the span of a month and a half, in 6 weeks, he wants their guys to get up 20,000, make 20,000 shots. And then he had one of their guys make 20,000 shots in 6 days. So yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. But just talk about that. I was interested to get your take on that as a coach, and then also as a guy who shot the ball at such a high level.
I mean, that's probably another difference in the facilities. At Lee's McRae, we have to share our gym with like four. It's total of 4 teams, so the availability is not always there for us. But when you, like you said, if your coach challenges you and you can get into the gym as much as that and do that, it's only going to make your team better, and that's one of the things I took to heart as a player. I try not to get bored with success. A lot of times when you're making shots and it starts to become easy, and then you start to lose focus because you're like, man, this is not as hard as people think. You're just making shots. And then you realize to yourself, well, that's what the game is about. You got to make shots. So I wanted to make sure I was ready to shoot from everywhere. And I had to create little games with myself. Like when I would go shoot outside and it didn't have a net on the rim, I would learn to concentrate, to learn to hit the ball on the rim. When it go through, it would come back to me instead of it being a swish. And now no net, I got to go run and get the ball. And I'm like, you get tired of doing that. So you got to learn to make the ball come back to you. Or, I also did a fun little game saying that my swish sounded different than other people's. You know what I'm saying? So it was little things you got to do. If you got to make these little games and compete with yourself to make sure you stay focused, I encourage you to do that, because you're only going to get your level of basketball is only going to get to a certain level. You know, I mean, at my size, I think what I was doing as a senior in high school, I was doing as a pro. So it wasn't like I was going to start all of a sudden doing a whole lot different things. You just got to keep doing the same things at a consistent level. And, you know, as a coach, we all want consistency from players. Being on that roller coaster of playing good one moment and then the next day you stink it up. And then the next day that's a tough way to get your confidence. So, you know, we just try to get these players to keep their confidence up and just continue work on your skill, because when it comes down to it in the NCAA tournament, these win or go home scenarios, all of that work should pay off if you keep advancing.
You've already started to allude to some of my next question. Just the mental side of things as a shooter is one thing to knock down shots, you know, when you're in an empty gym, you know, even if you have been running up and down, but it's different in the game situation when the game's on the line. And obviously this year you didn't have so much of a crowd, but when you add those other pieces into it in the actual game situation, it's a different matter for a lot of guys. So just talk about that from your perspective.
I mean, you know, with this season, you know, one of my challenges to my team was let's be the loudest team in the gym, because, you know, you even though we don't have a big crowd when you play, but sometimes when we play at home and the student body could come to the games, it would make a difference. So when you lose that aspect of the game, now you got to become your biggest cheerleaders. And, you know, that was one of the things I encouraged our team to do. And, you know, it was tough, especially when you're losing some games, it gets tough. But for the most part, you know, that was one of the things we knew that we would have to do to help ourselves. And the rest of it, it was just, you know, basketball. You know, sometimes going on the road isn't going to be easy. So now you got to figure out how you can do your best to perform on the road. And knowing when you're at home, you got to hold home court. So a lot didn't change, but the main things and learning how to cheer for each other, I think that's going to help us for the future.
Getting back to this weekend's matchups, before we dive into some of the matchups specifically, some interesting storylines. Getting back to the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles, the 15 seed. You know, taking a look at them, you've had Kevin O'Banner and then Max Asmus. And those two guys have just been lights out, combining for 113 points in the first two rounds.
I mean, when you got guys that can score the basketball, you know, that, I mean, it's your coaches, whichever one you prefer. Do you prefer that defensive guy that can lock people down? Or do you prefer that offensive guy that you know is going to be able to give you a good amount of points, because you got to score some points to win in these games? And for that coach to be able to know he got a couple of players that's scoring in the hundreds after a couple of games, you know, that's something all coaches would love to have. So to have two of them, you just know that it's a good chance one of them is going to really go off. So, you know, I think any of these coaches, they have a lot of threats coming into these games. I think they're going to give themselves a good chance.
Yeah, and I looked a little bit deeper on the O'Banner kid, on the one that he had a double-double on the last time out. I think he had a double-double in both games in the tournament against Ohio State as well as the Gators. But for the season, he was close to averaging a double-double. He was, I think, 19.7 and then 9.7.
Where those players at? I'm looking for them. Give me somebody that can give me a double-double every game, whether it be in points and assists or points and rebounds. You know, one thing my team know, if you get a double-double for us, I'll cook you a meal. I mean, I'm not the best chef, but sometimes those home-cooked meals give you a little inspiration.
As much as I love the 13th seed Ohio Bobcats and knocking off a defending champion, because obviously there was not a tournament last year, and the last champion was UVA.
Yeah, right.
So the 14th seed knocking off 13 knocking off a 4. But one of the unique stories that I was not even aware of until after the game was Ohio guard Jason Preston. He's a native of Orlando, Florida, but this is a kid that had averaged 2 points a game in high school. In prep school, he was pretty much under the radar, not heard of. And then so he produced some Twitter highlights of different things, but I'm sure game action, but then also different workouts he had done, showcasing his skills. And then he gets the offer from D1 Ohio in the beginning of this season, he had 31 against Illinois, who was obviously a #1 seed. And then in the tournament, in that upset of the Virginia Cavaliers, he I think he flirted with a triple double, and for the season, get this, Mister, his numbers right at 16 points a game, 7.3 rebounds, and 7.3 assists.
I mean, that's those diamonds in the rough right there. I mean, social media is incredible these days. When you can get your skills on tape and get it out there and for the world to see, and all it takes is you catching one person's eye and that person offers you a scholarship and now your life could possibly change. That's an amazing story. I believe it's a lot of players out there like that. I mean, the pandemic has kind of curtailed our recruiting a little bit. We're not able to get out as much as we would like. So I'm sure we probably overlooked a few, but I still get emails every day, and hopefully one of those emails could turn into one of these players you just talked about, because that's always a good thing to be able to have a player that can come in and give you an unexpected lift.
Another few notes before we dive into the specific matchups, just very quickly. And you had Rutgers, what a story they were, winning their first NCAA tournament game in 38 years. You had App State, who came up just shy against Norfolk State after a tremendous comeback in that ball game. But Dustin Kern's club, he led that program to their first NCAA tournament in 20 years. And then you also had Oregon State, which I've already mentioned, but the Beavers, Oregon State, that's just their second NCAA trip ever, and here they are in the Sweet 16.
I mean, that's why we watch the Madness bubble. You know that. I mean, anything can happen. Storylines will be created. Legends will be made. Some of these guys probably don't even realize it now, but because I know I didn't realize it when I was playing. I'm just was enjoying the game, and then next thing you know, you have legendary status bestowed on you, and you're like, wow, that's a great honor for people to think that much of your game. So they're creating memories just like I did, and it's good just to watch how the cycle goes. This basketball brotherhood and sisterhood that we have, and the stories that we can share, just about, like you just said, not having that opportunity, getting the opportunity, making the most of the opportunity, and then sharing what you know about it to maybe move it along. That's what I enjoy doing about the game.
One of the tremendous matchups we have this coming weekend. This is Sunday, 5 o'clock on CBS. In the East region, you have #1 seed Michigan, a 2-point favorite against 4-seeded Florida State. Talk about
dangerous.
Talk about the job that Juwan Howard has done at his alma mater.
Hey man, shout out to my former brotherhood man from the NBA. It's good to see guys that played in that league get to come back and coach and do their thing for their school. He's done a wonderful job, man. I think when you're part of a movement like he was with the Fab Five, you can't help but get, at some point, people wanting to come and try to relive that. And so I think they did a wonderful job. At the same time, Florida State, they got a couple players that, are definitely athletic enough to disrupt what they're trying to do. And, they got inside, outside scoring. So you're right. This could probably, I wouldn't be surprised if whoever wins this game ends up in the national title game or possibly winning it.
Yeah, I agree with you. The winner of that game will take on a couple of tremendous stories here. You had #2 seed Alabama, everything that Nate Oates is doing there after doing a tremendous job at Buffalo. The Tide, they get 11th seed UCLA, which was, of course, in that 11th seed playing game against Michigan State. And now the Bruins under Mick Cronin, they're on a heck of a run. Obviously, so much tradition out there in Westwood, and that one's 7:15 on Sunday night on TBS.
I mean, UCLA has impressed me. Their size. I think one of the things coaches are realizing is that the length of the game can make a difference. And UCLA seems like they have about 6 or 7 guys that float right around in that 6'5", 6'9" area that can do multiple things. And it's almost like it's positionless basketball. You know, anybody can bring the ball up the court. Anybody can take a matchup and go one-on-one and get you something good, whether it be for themselves or for the kick out. That's going to be a dangerous team. I think they're going to compete. And like I said, this weekend is going to tell a lot, but you know, Gonzaga is still going to be tough to get up out of there because their experience and the way they play together, they just seems a little bit different with them than the other teams I've watched.
Moving on to the West region, you have number 1 seed Gonzaga. What a story they are, 28-0. Everything that Mark Few has accomplished there in Spokane, but then you have them playing the Creighton Blue Jays. Gonzaga's, of course, looking to go 32-0 and be the first team to finish the season undefeated since Indiana's did so back, I guess, 76 under Bob Knight.
Right. I mean, Creighton is a tough team too, man. They're well coached. I know they had a few little issues and everything, but, you know, I think they got it together. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of those players still understand that. I think as a player, you understand it's about you. Even though the coach leads you and tries to give you direction, you're on the court making everything happen. So trying to do your best for what the structure of the team or the system that you're running, but at the same time, being able to freelance and play basketball, I think a lot of players are really starting to relish in that moment. And I think a lot of the coaches are starting to give players that they trust a little bit more freedom. So I think that Creighton, I think they could make it a game, but like I said, they're gonna have to play a really good game. One of those Villanova beat Georgetown shooting type games, or one of the UVA getting beat by Loyola. I think that type of performance is what it's going to take to knock off Gonzaga.
And then the winner of that matchup will be taking on either USC or Oregon, where you had that Pac-12 game, the 6th seed versus the 7th seed. They only met once during the season. I'm not sure if that's the way it was supposed to be, or perhaps that had to do with COVID, but I believe USC got the best of Oregon in that matchup. It was a game played in LA, and the Trojans won 72-58.
I mean, they know each other. You know, that's one of the toughest things to have to continue to do. You know, you can't trick somebody that is familiar with you. Y'all in the same conference. Y'all, besides this year, I'm sure y'all went at it in the past, and I think that's just going to be something else that they're going to have to know. They know what they're getting when they play each other. I think USC, I like their length. I think they play together well, but I like the way Oregon shoot that thing. They can fill it up. So I think this could be an up and down type game, but you know, I like USC in this one.
And again, that game is 9:45 on Sunday night on TBS. Moving on to the South region, these are Saturday games. Number 1 seed Baylor. What a job Scott Drew has done there. I remember the mess he inherited several years ago now, but he's took that program into a national championship contender, and then a team that's won national titles, Jay Wright and Villanova, as the 5 seed, 5:15 on Saturday on CBS.
I mean, if you like guard play, I think this is definitely the game you want to see. Baylor, I haven't seen them a lot, but the times I have seen them, they to me, their guards remind me of Donovan Mitchell, athletic, can do a lot of good things one-on-one. And, you know, coach from Villanova, his players, he got a long line of tough guards that are able to get it done. And, you know, I would probably say whichever guards play the best will probably win this game.
Yeah, no doubt. And the winner of that will get either 3 seed Arkansas or those 15th seeded Oral Roberts Golden Eagles, 7:25 on TBS. What do you think about that one? Can Oral Roberts keep it going?
I mean, I'm sure they believe in they can. You know, Arkansas, I can't really. I remember back in the day, Todd Day, Lee Mayweather. I can't remember his last name, but
you were right the first time. Lee Mayberry.
Yeah, okay. I remember they had those battles with UNLV back in the day, and I just don't remember them making too much of a splash. So them getting back there now, I think it's probably something that they're gonna, relish in the moment. They got to think the big boy way. We're number 3, they're number 15. There's no way they should beat us, but we got to come to play. You can't say that and think that Oral Roberts won't come in there and do what they just did to the other 2 opponents. So we should see. I'm interested to see how that one unfolds also.
Yeah, like you're talking about with Arkansas, they were so consistent under Nolan Richardson. You remember Corliss Williamson,
yes,
and all those teams, the 40 minutes of hell.
Yes, chaos at its best.
Coach Richardson, called it. But that's of course a 30 for 30, and that's an excellent watch. If you haven't seen that, I say 30 for 30. It's either that or one of the ESPN SEC storied, but that's an excellent one that I'm sure you've seen. But I remember back in '94 when they won the national title, when it was played at the old Charlotte Coliseum.
Wow. That, like I said, man, winning that title, people will never forget you. And I'm sure Arkansas remembers that. I'm sure those names have come back up as they make their run, because that's the beauty about the game. I always feel like records are made to be broken. I would love to be able to be on hand when someone breaks my assist record at East Tennessee State, or somebody breaks my high school scoring record that still stands to this day. So, I think it would be a great thing to see, where the new guys can understand what the old guys went through and create their own memories.
Last region, the one that we have not discussed thus far, is the Midwest. Midwest has been very crazy. You have the 8-seeded Loyola Chicago Ramblers. They were a story a few years ago. Now you have
they're growing up now. They're growing up.
Yeah, you have a 101-year-old Sister Jean, and she still deliver. She gets fired up and she delivers an excellent pregame speech. I'm sure you may have heard that. Saw it on social media. But the Ramblers at 2:40 on Saturday afternoon will be taking on Oregon State, which we've already touched on the story they are out of the Pac-12. But talk about that matchup, and Loyola Chicago in the round of 32 against number 1 seed Illinois. They took care of business. It wasn't like they won on a last-second shot. They won by, I think it was either 11 or 13 points, and they had Illinois at arm's length coming down the stretch.
I mean, like I said, man, that's their program that they knocked off the number 1. I mean, we were that close. And I often wonder what that have done for our energy going into the next season. And even though we didn't win that game, we did, come back that next year, and we were like, we took the number 1 team to the max. So for them to win, I know they feel like they belong now. I don't think if they win this next game, they're going to be surprised. I think they're going to feel like we're going to win the next one after this too. They play so hard. That coach, when you got a bunch of kids that, if you don't have all the size that you normally would have, but you got some toughness, you got some grit, you got some inner fortitude that wants to make sure that your team plays as hard as they can possibly play, those type of teams are always going to give themselves a chance. So I would like to see that Cinderella story just keep going forward.
And then the winner of that matchup will take on the 2nd seed Houston Cougars or number 11 seed Syracuse. And David Glenn, who I'm sure you may be familiar with, having been in the North Carolina area, he's a big ACC guy, ACCsports.com, and also hosted a statewide radio show for several years. But David Glenn, he was on our podcast, The Sports Objective, here within the last few days, and prior to the tournament starting. And
Nice.
and DG projected Syracuse to make it to at least the Sweet 16, and here they are. Jim Boeheim in his 45th season, and his son on the team.
I mean, I'm sure Coach Boeheim has to be thrilled to be able to be coaching at this part of the season, and then the coach's son on top of that. That zone that they play has always been a problem. Actually, we had mentioned earlier, one of his assistants, Adrian Autry, we played together over in France. And so, you know, I'm always cheering for guys that I got love for, that, you know, just being in another country and playing ball with him and seeing how he played. And now you see him as a coach and you see him, you know, doing this thing where he played at. You know, I'm wishing him the best of luck. And you never know with that zone, if you're not hitting against it, it could be a long night for you. So we'll see how that one turns out.
Yeah, and you know what a coaching matchup. I mean, you look at Coach Boeheim, 45 years now at Syracuse, his alma mater. The Orange has only won less than 18 ball games once in his career. They've never had a losing season, and I guess the closest they've ever come to a losing season, I think, is if I'm correct on this, was maybe way back in 81, 82. They went something like 16-13. So just
Oh,
remarkable
wow.
success there. I can
That's
imagine
impressive.
being so consistent, never having a losing season in 45 years. Because you know, as good as Coach K's been at Duke, he's had, you know,
Yeah,
I
he had a
think
rough
maybe
start.
one or two, something like that.
Yeah.
But and then you have Kelvin Sampson at Houston. What a job he's done. You know, at Washington State, Oklahoma,
Oklahoma.
et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. Those two coaches are, you know, they seem like they get the most out of their players. You know, I think if you're a player and you're going to Syracuse, then you pretty much know zone defense is what you're going to play. And I think when you built your program and you do that at a consistent level of winning, like you just said, then you know it makes me wonder why a lot of other teams don't play zone. But I guess sometimes at Syracuse, you get those special type of athletes that can make your jump shot more difficult. And like you said, Coach Sampson, he just always finds out a way to win. You know, he's always going to be in the mix. So I'm sure both of these teams are going to be well prepared, and it's just going to come down to Houston. Are they going to shoot the ball well enough? Because Jim Boeheim's son, he gets going. It could be a tough night for Houston.
Before we switch gears, do you have a projection? Obviously, I know as a coach, you obviously can't take part in those sorts of things. But
Right.
you know, if you had to say who's going to cut down the nets here in a couple weeks in Indianapolis, who do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be the Zags?
You know, I'm kind of, if I had to say I'm leaning one way, I would probably say that would be the way. Those guys, they just seem like I said, they genuinely enjoy playing basketball with each other. They do it at all three levels, at the basket, the mid-range, and the three. They play defense, the communication's there. I often wonder, though, when they play a real athletic team like Baylor or someone of that nature, how would that transpire? So I'm waiting to see what kind of matchup we finally get. But like I said, I'm just a fan of good basketball right now. You know, big East Tennessee State fan, but they're not in it right now. So I just want to continue to see good basketball and let it segue right into the NBA playoffs. So I'm excited for this weekend.
I'm certainly not a betting man either, but if I had to predict what's going to happen, I would think that I would take Gonzaga to take the trophy home to Spokane. Forgive me, Zag fans. I misspoke earlier. I think I said Spokane, but yeah, I think the Zags will probably cut down the nets, but it's going to be interesting to see. You know, switching gears, final thing for you. When we had you on the Sports Objective before, I was not aware of your documentary talking about your years and the teams that you were part of there in Johnson City. So if you would tell our listeners about that.
Well, you know, like I was telling you, you know, that was little did I know I was going to be able to make a movie about my 4 years at East Tennessee State after I left. You know, when we came to that program and they were coming off probation and Coach Robinson was given the opportunity, even though his winning percentage wasn't the best at the time. You know, it just goes to show you that a great recruiting class can change the vision of everybody in that city. And that was one of the things we did. And, you know, when you move past that and you look back on it, and when you go back to Johnson City and everybody still remembers a lot of the things that happened, it just made me wonder, like, I wonder how well it would do. And, you know, it kind of happened, you know, when I did this movie, you know, I think it was not this past November, but in 2019, a lot of stuff was going on. And so I don't think a lot of people even really knew about it. So I'm continually trying to get the word out about it. And, it was fun just going back through the memories with your teammates that you went to war with. And, the fact that, we still remain brothers. I mean, I talk to probably one of my Buck brothers, I would say daily. One of us are going to say something I'm going to speak to somebody or hear from somebody through the phone at some point. And you don't hear that about a lot of teams, especially 20 something, 30 years later. So it was something that I still watch it, and I know pretty much the whole thing now, but just hearing, some of the things that we had to go through. And then of course, losing Alvin and Major, it's just, brings back sweet memories of them. And, I hope more of the world gets to see this story. That one of the things is it's such a feel-good story that I heard that people didn't know how good it would be because we didn't have a bad guy. It's like America wants to see the controversy. And I'm like, I just think we can change that. I think a lot of our world, is when we go through that controversial stage of being opinionated or I think this or you got to think that. And when you take that out of the equation and you just see something that feels good, then hopefully, it can make you feel good and you can spread that. So I'm hoping at some point it catches on like that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I look forward to checking it out. I'll certainly do that in the very near future. And I meant to ask you this earlier when we were talking about your career, but now that we circle back around to your career at East Tennessee State, as well as your professional career for that matter, here recently I heard an interview with Alex English, who was obviously a tremendous player, played at South Carolina, and then also I remember all those years with the Denver Nuggets. He was talking about when this was on a South Carolina podcast, the Spurs Up show. He was talking about being defended by Scottie Pippen and having a very good night against Scottie. And then all of a sudden, MJ says, all right, let me guard him. And he said he shut me down from that point on. So back in your days, when you were lighting it up, do you remember any moments like that where maybe an opposing defender called you out or maybe called his teammate out and said, hey, let me guard him?
I mean, I remember, playing against Scottie after Mike had left, and, he played like the point forward a lot. So when we matched, it was like he was my matchup, and it was almost like he was daring me to shoot, or, he didn't want to get too close because he knew I could go by him on the pick and rolls and stuff of that nature. So Scottie wasn't that big of a talker, but I would have to say, if I had to think, I mean, I would say Gary Payton probably was the one that, that was letting even in warm-ups, hey, little fella, you better be ready today. I got you today. You better be, and he would tell me, I know that jump shot nice, but I got you today. So things like that from other guys, because I really wasn't I wasn't a talker. I was probably the best cheerleader on the team, because if you got dunked on by one of my teammates, he might not say anything, but I'm probably gonna say something. So I was that type of hoorah type of teammate. But I wasn't big in the conversation, but you hear a lot of different stuff, and it's always good. I think it's friendly and competitive. I think it challenges you to step it up. And if you don't, sometimes when your levels are so equal, maybe the verbal or your body, your size might be able to give you that advantage. But if not, then, you just got to play hard and have fun with it and enjoy it as much as you can. Because
Gary Payton was probably the top defender you went against at the professional level. What about college? Do you remember?
Nah, not really in college. I don't really, I played with a lot of threats. I played with 4 other guys that scored over 1,000 points. So we scored a lot. So it wasn't like you could just be like, I'm going to take Mr. out of the game and shut these other guys down, because I didn't have to shoot. I was just a really good shooter that shot a very high percentage. So I didn't have to take a whole lot of shots. So I knew I could get the ball to my guys, and they were going to be able to do their thing. And if they couldn't, then I felt confident enough in my game that I could go one-on-one and create and get my own shot. So it was like I saw boxing ones in college. I saw that in high school though. So that really, it wasn't like anything different for me. So it, college, it definitely wasn't as hard, but in the NBA, yeah, every night, you playing against somebody that is at the top of their game, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously you had the regulations as well, as far as the defenses that you cannot play. Because I remember when I was very young and going to Hornets games, I was looking at my dad. I said, "What's the illegal defense?"
Yeah, I know, right? And it seemed like right when I left the NBA, they started letting you play a 2-3 zone. So that would have helped me out tremendously, because that was an automatic when I played. Take them in the post, take them in the post. So I had to be ready to defend down there all the time. And if we'd have had the zone in place then I don't think I would have ever had to be posted up, and I probably could have stuck around a little bit longer.
Appreciate your time this afternoon. You've been very generous. Have really enjoyed, as always. Catching up and talking some basketball with you. It's going to be very interesting to see how things unfold this weekend and then the following weekend up in Indianapolis. I know you'll be tuned in, and we look forward to having you back down the road.
Yeah, well, check your phone. We'll be texting each other laughing at some of these games, because I got a feeling the best is yet to come. Once again, thank you, Bubba, for having me on. I always cherish these March Madness moments, and look forward to chatting with you again soon in the near future.
Absolutely. In 2021, 2022 season, I'll do my best to get up to Banner Elk, or maybe catch you guys on the road somewhere.
Well, hopefully they're allowing people in the gym at that point. And if they are, definitely love to see you there.
That concludes this edition of the Bubba Rose Show. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you listen. Also, be sure to follow us on social media at Bubba Rosenbaum on Twitter, at Bubba Rose Show on Instagram. Like and follow the Bubba Rose Show on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let us hear from you by emailing us at thebubbaroseshow@gmail.com. Again, that's thebubbaroseshow@gmail.com. We'll see you next time, y'all.